Hello and welcome back to the Adventures of Lola Badiola. In the last chapter, we witnessed an improvement in Lola's professional situation. She recovered some of her confidence, rediscovered her love of sales, and booked a meeting with the biggest fish in the market. But what is happening in her personal life? Is it also improving? Let's find out.
The Adventures of Lola Badiola, Chapter 20, The Paella. Eugenio Hernandez knew how to cook the perfect paella. He was a native of Denia in Valencia, where he grew up in a big house by the Mediterranean Sea with his parents and his grandparents. From the moment he could chop a carrot, he loved to cook. While his friends were in the street playing football, he was in the kitchen with his abuela, boiling eggs, frying onions, and baking bread. His abuela was responsible for cooking all the food in the house, and she taught him everything she knew. She showed him the best combination of seafood for a fideuà. She showed him how to pulverize the almonds to make the smoothest turrón. But most importantly, she shared with him the secrets of the perfect paella. She explained to him that success depended on 3 key elements: ingredients, timing, and witchcraft. She said that it was an intuitive process, more of a feeling than a technique. She told him that the only way to develop this feeling was to spend hours and hours in the kitchen, watching, learning, and assisting a master cook. And that is exactly what Eugenio did for the first 18 years of his life. When Eugenio and Concha were both in town, they loved to entertain in their small apartment. They were the social epicenter of their community, and that Sunday they had invited 8 friends for lunch. "How's it going?" asked Lola, as she walked into the kitchen with a glass of Rioja in her hand. "Fine," replied Eugenio, bending down and looking at the enormous pan of simmering rice as if it were a science experiment. He had just reached the most critical stage in the preparation of the rabbit and artichoke dish. "You know, in England they put chorizo in their paella," said Lola, laughing. "It's a Jamie Oliver recipe." Eugenio didn't react. "They say he'll never be allowed back into Valencia." Eugenio leaned forwards and inspected the rice at the edge of the paella, like a biologist might examine the specimens in a petri dish. "How was the trip to the World Economic Forum?" "Fascinating." "Great." Lola took a sip of wine and watched the stock bubbling away at the center of the paella pan. "So, where are you going next?" "China." "Cool." It was clear from his one-word answers that Eugenio didn't want any distractions at that specific moment, so Lola excused herself and walked back into the living room. Concha was in the middle of telling a story about her recent visit to New York to the 6 guests who had already arrived. She had met the CFO of an investment bank who was contemplating a move to London. She had taken him out for lunch to discuss the terms and conditions of the offer. At the end of the meal, she had left some change as a tip. The waiter had followed her out of the restaurant and refused to let her get into a taxi until she paid him properly. 20%! shouted Concha. "He wanted 20%! The apartment intercom buzzed. The 8th and final guest had arrived. Concha was clearly distracted with the other guests, and Eugenio could not be disturbed, so Lola went to answer it. "Hello?" she said into the mouthpiece. "Concha?" said a man's voice. "No, it's Lola." "Oh, hi, Lola. Can you let me in?" It took a moment for Lola to recognize the voice. "Sure," she said, and pressed the button that opened the entrance from the street below. She felt butterflies in her stomach, and her heart started to race. It was the voice of Mr. Red Bull. She didn't know he was coming to lunch. She thought it was going to be a simple and relaxed Sunday afternoon with friends, a chance to forget all the stress in her life. After the grilling she had received from Interpol, her mind was fried. She needed the weekend to unwind, de-stress and recover. But with the arrival of Mr. Red Bull, the atmosphere of Sunday lunch, at least for Lola, had suddenly become deliciously tense. She opened the front door of the apartment. She could hear his footsteps running up the stairwell. She wondered if she should stay there and greet him herself, or just disappear amongst the other guests. As the footsteps grew louder and louder, her heart seemed to beat faster and faster, until the door of the apartment burst open and Mr. Red Bull walked in. He looked at Lola and smiled. "Hello again," he said, and kissed her on both cheeks. "Hi," Lola replied. They stood at the entrance staring at each other for a moment, and then he said, "Wow, that paella smells incredible." Lola was lost for words, like a teenager meeting her crush in the school hallway. She searched deep inside her brain for something intelligent to say, and the only thing she could think of was, "You know, in England they sometimes put chorizo in their paella,